Hello everyone, Nordic Beast here, and welcome back to the Shipyard. So, I realize I've been on hiatus for the last 3 weeks or so, and that's mostly due to personal scheduling, work, and personal life, and all that good stuff. And then, you know, I realized I hadn't put anything out, so I figured it was high time I did. One of the other things that's come up is I really want to put out some high-quality stuff, and I have an idea for that. So, of course, I've been wanting to do my Glorious Adventures, but it's just not going to work out the way I really wanted it to because my schedule does not sync up with everybody else's. I work evenings in North American time, well, Eastern Standard Time, North America, and everybody else I know, even in the States, all work days. So I'm on, usually, between midnight and 5 a.m. And even across the world, other people aren't on. So that's a big problem. Anyway, I'm going to take a cue from another series that's XP Gamer, Morphologist, and I can't remember the other gentleman's name. It's slipping by me. Anyway, the way they solved it, I only watched the first couple episodes of each. I haven't been keeping up with it, and I should. But in those first few episodes, the way they solved the issue of not being able to record at the same time was from everyone's perspective as they were separated on a planet. And it was a good idea. So I might have to use a cue from that to be able to do more of a solo survival for the Glorious Adventures, and then with a plot point, or a MacGuffin, will you, that would allow me to find people and add them as I go to be able to, you know, just have them when it syncs up with my schedule. So I think that would work out well, and I'm really excited for it, and I've been working on it really hard the last few days, and I'll have a teaser at the end of this video. So, anyway, alright, let's get started with this. So, I've been working on a lot of aircraft, as you can see here. Now, they don't necessarily need the aircraft shape, but, you know, it kind of looks cool. So, first off, I had started with this thing here, and I wanted to go with like a Macross, you know, Robotech fighter look, and it ended up a little too wide, I think, for its length, and it's so wide and stubby. But I liked the general idea. I especially liked the guns and how the guns ended up turning out, and I tried that on this fighter design, and it didn't quite work out as well, but that's a lot of freaking firepower. Anyway, this thing actually handled pretty well, and on the workshop, sorry, it's dead of winter and I'm sniffling, my bad. Sorry. Anyway, I've seen on the workshop a lot of really, really big transatmospheric vehicles, like, well, aircraft, you know, fighters and transports and what have you. So I thought I'd try and make a big one that could handle both atmosphere and vacuum equally as well. So as you see, this thing is a beast. I did not finish it because it got so big that I was just like, I don't know if this is even practical, and the engine nacelles are so long. Look at that. By comparison, especially to like the wings. I mean, this thing was getting big. And yeah. But in between these two designs, I built this. Now, it doesn't have a name. I haven't quite finished it yet. It's actually pretty damn good as far as my transatmospheric designs go. And every time Dracul sees this thing, he, like, you know, just goes nuts. He absolutely loves this design. And I realize it does kind of look like a MiG. Somewhere between, like, a MiG, an F-14, and F-15. I say F-14 just because of the cockpit nose design. Looks very F-14-esque. And then the wing tail layout is somewhere between an F-14 and a MiG. But anyway, originally this actually had merge blocks, but they took up so much space there was enough room for other weapons, and it was a little less practical on this design. It didn't have enough lift capacity for weapons, so I went with, or for like custom weapons for the merge blocks, so I went with the rockets, and then twin guns. And that worked out pretty well. The backseater is a little less necessary on this one because of it, so you don't really need a second crew member, but this thing actually handles surprisingly well in both space and atmosphere. But its acceleration in atmosphere is a little low because of just the two small thrusters. I mean, it works. Once you're up to speed, you're okay. Now, this guy is actually on the workshop. So this is my Viggen 2. I actually blanked on the name for a minute. That's why I turned on my HUD. Like, is the radar or the antenna on? But, yeah. So anyway, this is the Viggen 2, which the Viggen was a Swedish aircraft from like the 70s and 80s. I think up into the 90s they flew it. In fact, they might still have some in reserve units in Sweden now. But yeah, it's designed by Saab. And one of my favorite all-time aircraft. Not just because it's Swedish, and I seem to like a lot of Swedish stuff, but it is a beautiful, amazing, bulky aircraft. But anyway, so this kind of took everything I had accumulated in all these designs and put it in one. It's big, it's good at both space and atmospheric flight, it has merge blocks, a reason for a second seater, it also has all the rockets, twin guns, and I really like how I was able to get the landing gear in here. I like how I just, originally I didn't have this fairing around it, and it looked just odd, so I kind of put that there, because I usually put a fairing around the cameras near the connector, and it worked out really well, so I put it on these as well, back here, and it worked out, especially with this design, quite well. So, yeah, so if you look in here, I have atmospheric thrusters, ion thrusters. It's held up just by the 2 large and 2 small atmospheric thrusters, and it does a pretty good job. The 2 small for yaw, and then back here it has 1 large. It's actually decent acceleration. It's not the best. You could definitely build a spaceborne or atmospheric fighter that's better than this, you know, but neither one would be able to be transatmospheric like this thing and be able to do well on both. I mean, it's a well-rounded craft. Now, the cool thing about this... Alright, hold on, I gotta... Timers, radar. Boop. Let's go ahead and trigger now. I have a radar set. So, this is actually a script that I'm running. Now, it uses the... what's called the remote block in order to use the radar. Now, the remote block can detect things in a horizontal plane, so it only picks up things in a horizontal plane. Now, the advantage to this is once you spot a target visually, you can range it. You look at it, and then when the radar picks it up, you can tell how far it is. And that is actually surprisingly useful. Now, the pilot can use it, but it would be better for the backseater. And then the backseater can control the 2 guided missiles that you could build for this thing if you wanted. Or you could build bombs or, you know, anti-ship torpedoes, whatever the hell you want. But anything guided could be guided by the weapons, what is it? WSO, Weapon System Operator. Couldn't think of it. I remember the acronym, but I couldn't remember the actual name. So, yeah, I really love this thing. I find myself flying it quite often. I mean, it's hefty. Especially in space. Like, I have no dampener mods or anything on, so I mean, it's decent, and it accelerates relatively well. Now, it only has the 2 cannons under the nose, but it's not designed as a gunfighter. And the idea is it would fire its 2 long-range missiles at enemy fighters before it would close in on guns. Now, it does have the 4 rockets. Alright, come on. Slow down. Slow down, you're good. Come on, buddy, you got 2 large ion thrusters in the front. Though, honestly, it slows down better than most of my fighters. But anyway, yeah, the idea is to hit targets with the missiles first, and then use the cannons. Even the rockets are meant more against fixed targets or large targets like large ships. So, now this guy here was designed because all these are all fighters. They're all combat craft. And as much as I love combat ships, I'm getting a little burned out on them. I do it all the time. I need to make something else. So this is the Svard, which is Swedish for sword. And the Svard is actually designed as like a scientific scout craft. Basically, you would get to a planet like this, and you would drop this ship down instead of using a large ship. So this guy, as you can tell, is very transatmospheric. You can see all the different thrusters. And I kind of like it. It gives it like a utilitarian look about it. Now, my original design was I wanted the 4 large thrusters, the atmospheric thrusters, and I wanted cockpits in between them. These are about this one is the main cockpit. These two are just for carrying crew members, and it's designed to have oxygen with it. It has an oxygen generator as well as an oxygen tank, so it can easily support the 3 crew members. Yeah, you can see the generator up there, and I believe it actually has 2 oxygen tanks in here, and then a large reactor and a medium cargo container. This thing I've taken off with 50,000 kilograms worth of material, as well as a drone on top, which that's like another 6,000 kilograms, and this thing will still exit the atmosphere. Now, originally I had only 2 of these ion thrusters, and I would get to the edge of the atmosphere and just kind of hover. I couldn't pass the atmosphere into space. So once I put those extra 2 thrusters back there, this thing's like a speeding bullet and works so well. I will post this on the workshop soon, and I love this thing, and it handles really, really well in atmosphere. Like it's definitely a good craft for that. Because of the 4 lifting engines, it can actually lift quite well, much like my atmospheric lifter, my heavy lifter. Yeah. Alright. So next up is this little fighter. Now, I named this the Ruby. Now, the reason it's named the Ruby is my daughter Ruby was sitting next to me on my wife's computer watching YouTube, and I designed this little fighter. And I designed it based on the engines of my Atgir fighter. The fighter that looks surprisingly similar to a B-Wing, but with the cockpit in the middle instead of on the top, and lots of artistic liberties. It's basically just same layout. You could say it itself looks like a B-Wing, as this would look like a Z-95, which is supposed to be the precursor to the X-Wing if you follow any Star Wars lore. You know, yeah, same general layout, but this is obviously not a Z-95. Anywho, I really like the engine layout, so I decided to build a fighter based on it, and it turned out quite well. And I was trying to stuff an oxygen tank in here somewhere, and then it dawned on me I don't necessarily need one. Now, the cockpit itself is conveyed for oxygen, which gives you about 20 minutes of oxygen or so, but you can always carry oxygen bottles with you. You don't necessarily need an oxygen tank. So my general role-playing concept for this is it's supposed to be like an earlier fighter, like an older design, you know, with no oxygen tank to it, but it's very fast, it's very nimble, and it's easily upgraded too, as it has only the 2 cannons and the rocket launcher, which, are they? Yeah. I kind of like where they're mounted too. Now, I did make a version, I didn't save it though, where you see the little warning signs there. Behind them I actually had, like towards the wing, I actually had atmospheric thrusters, and I put another one underneath, so it just had 3 small atmospheric thrusters, and it could actually land on a planet. And then once it got to altitude, the ion thrusters gave enough thrust that it could go back into space. But it made it heavier and only gave it the ability to land on a planet, and it was much uglier, so really this is just a spacefaring fighter. And I like it. It might be in my Glorious Adventures. Well, a lot of this might be. So last but not least, this is a prototype design from a suggestion by, what's his name? Hold on, I got it written down here. By Tucker O'Donnell. He's made suggestions before, and this is just a prototype concept. This design, he suggested I design something that allows me to take off from a planet with cargo that, like my Black Widow fighter, that can't take off from a planet, can't even land on a planet. So let's say hypothetically you build one on a planet, you have no way to get it off of there. This design is meant to be able to take something like that and get it into orbit. So this whole top comes off. My heavy lifter design grabs it, you release the merge blocks, it flies it off and lands it, and then you go grab a Black Widow, and then this whole top is gone, so you can just land it in here, lock it in, and then you put the top back on and fly it into space. So the reason this is my prototype is obviously it's quite ugly. I didn't fully think it out, and I realized I don't have reverse ion thrusters on here, which I need to put on here. Because I've only I've only taken it off from a planet and brought it up into the gravitational well. So I'm still thrusting away from the planet. But in atmosphere, it actually handles relatively well. It's not too bad. The concept is sound, but I think I'm going to reverse this, where this will be the bottom, and the rest of it will be fine. So basically, you'll land the bottom, release it, and... Here, this will help. You'll release it, and it'll drop onto the ground. And then you can load up the Black Widow and what have you. So when this goes into space, you can just drop its bottom shell off to release the Black Widow, and then it can reattach this top. And I should also do it so that the ion thrusters aren't attached. So yeah, that's a big disadvantage. So, but again, this is just a proof of concept, so thank you, Tucker. I appreciate the idea. I will have to finish this design, and hopefully my next Shipyard episode will have a finished version of this. So why don't we go ahead and go down to our planet here. We show you some of the other things I've been working on. There's one thing specifically. Where is it? Ah, found it. Boop. Yeah, thank you, Space Master. This I'm going to name the DHR. Now, the reason I'm naming this the DHR is this is based on my other wheeled vehicle design, utility ground vehicle, so UGV-3. This one would be the new variant. It's much smaller, much lighter, and handles much better. And it has all the exact same capabilities. Here, let me shut those lights off. They're driving me nuts. There we go. Okay. So, as I said, Mike helped me with this a lot. Mike's been working on wheels like crazy. Like, that's been his passion as of late. And he had just a list of suggestions for my UGV. And number one was it only needed one small reactor to run the wheels. And, you know, even for other systems on board, it doesn't really need all that much power. And I was able to make it in a much more compact design. His other suggestion was the remote block kept getting shot out anytime it was anywhere near a gun, because the remote block was right there, where that block is. And it just kept getting shot out, and that's the way you control the vehicle. So, it is encased in here under heavy armor, which is much more effective. Now, underneath, there are two stripes of heavy armor to give it a bit more strength for the undercarriage, as well as giving heavier weight underneath to keep it, you know, upright instead of flipping all the time. Mike also worked on the wheels for me, so let's go ahead and give this a quick drive. Oh, now, as you notice, the friction is low, but that's because as you gain in speed, you begin to, like, overcompensate for everything. Come on, slow down. But you can also use the gyro to help you turn, which can be quite useful. But this thing is actually good for all but, like, the worst of terrain. And in if you were to drive around on the ice, it's just amazing. Like, flatlands, you can flat out go full speed with this thing without too much worry, except for the game gets really pissy when you go full speed with wheels. So, alright, there's one last thing I would like to show before I go. Come on, little vehicle. DHR, which, by the way, while I'm driving over here, the term DHR, Mike informed me, is the Dutch term for Mister. So I am naming this truck the Mister. So, but thank you, Mike. I really appreciate all the help you gave me with designing this. Now, he recently designed this big rover that will probably be in my next episode. So, oh, scratch that. There's two things. I want to turn this on first. Boop. Turn you on. Merge. Lock. Off. You. Is that right? That's the one I'm looking for. Okay. Whoops. This little guy here is the little drone that comes with the Shipyard. This is the Wiseman Mark II. So basically you can have a 5-kilometer scouting range from wherever you land without having to actually fly your ship around, which is part of the reason why you have a 2-man crew. I love this little thing. It's just awesome. Absolutely awesome. Alright. So the other thing I want to show you was this. This is my first ever atmospheric fighter. Yeah, there we go. So me and Barbarian John the other day actually had a dogfight in these, and you know, he actually shot me up pretty well. I was trying to hit him with rockets. He ended up peppering me with enough shots to actually do some damage, so technically I'd say he won, but then we ended up slamming into each other and destroying our cockpits. Yep. That's what happens when you dogfight. Everybody rams each other. But this thing actually handles really, really well. So one of the things I was actually thinking about doing for the Glorious Adventures is I might use the Wings mod, a Speed mod, and a Reentry and Drag mod, which I think is pretty damn cool. I'm going to test it first. I really, really like those mods, especially like the Drag and Reentry mixed with the Wings. Like, I think all that together is cool. But all the mods I'm going to be adding are things I think belong in the game, like very balanced weapons, which, I mean, combat's not going to be a big deal for the Glorious Adventures, but of course it'll happen. But there'll be the holographic radar mod, which is something I think should be in the game. I might end up using the camera LCDs, which is, if you haven't used that, that is an awesome mod. Absolutely awesome. Definitely use it. Maybe while I'm talking, I'll give this guy a go. Alright, do I have... Yep, there we go. So yeah, it'll be all things that I think should be in the game anyway. So nothing too game-breaking. I'll probably have, like, the cockpits that can open up, as well as the LCDs that go with it, and just things like that. So yeah. So anyway, let me know what you guys think, and if you guys have any ideas for future episodes, please let me know. And I'll see you guys next time. Oh, and enjoy the teaser at the end.